Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cloud Accounting Podcast, the audio edition of Cloud Accounting Weekly, a free email update for accountants and controllers using cloud technology to improve efficiencies and make their jobs more strategic and impactful. We are recording live on CPA Academy. If you're interested in listening in live and participating in our broadcast, you're welcome to do so. Just head on over to cpaacademy.org for future recording sessions. And thanks to everyone who has joined in live today. Dan, it's snowing. Is that in Iowa? It's not snowing here in Los Angeles. It's about 72 degrees, so you're welcome to come and visit the Flowcast offices in Sherman Oaks, and I'd be happy to give you a tour. If you're watching live, you can see behind me, we've got this fancy new startup office. We've got about 80 employees here in the Valley, the San Fernando Valley, and I'm loving it here. So, and Jeff, we've got Jeff Phillips as our guest today. Jeff, where are you located?
Hey, Blake. Good afternoon, and hey to everybody on the call and listening in. Blake, I'm in Pensacola, Florida. So Pensacola is my
Okay.
hometown. It's about 70 and sunny, and it's perfect today
Oh.
outside. So I'm very happy.
It's funny, I knew that, but then I tend to forget where people are because I have we met in person, Jeff? I don't think we have. I think it's only
Blake,
been on.
it's a sign of the times
Yeah,
because I consider you a friend, and I feel like I know you very well, and I've never seen you in person.
that's amazing. Well, we're gonna have to change
That's
that some point, sometime in the future.
yes, absolutely.
Well, let's do some formal introductions, shall we? I am Blake Oliver. I am your host today. I am the author of Cloud Accounting Weekly. I am also a senior product marketing manager at Flowcast, where you can see behind me if you're watching live. We make close management software that helps accountants close the books faster and more accurately. If you're interested in learning more about Flowcast, check us out at flowcast.com. That's FLOQAST.com. And if you want to check out my personal website, visit blakeoliver.com, and you can also tweet at me at Blake T. Oliver. But enough about me. My guest today is who I'm interested in. It's Jeff Phillips. He's the CEO of Accountingfly, an all-in-one solution for hiring accounting and finance talent. So if you're looking for an accounting job or looking to fill a position in your firm, be sure to check out Accountingfly at accountingfly.com. So Jeff, thanks again for joining me today. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here, and I'll tell you one other thing. It strikes me how few people realize this, but Accounting Fly is the parent organization of Going Concern, which is some people kind of laugh when they realize that, but we love Going Concern. I've got actually a great Going Concern article in here in a second, and it's been a fun ride being a website publisher over the past 2.5 years. That's a job description I never knew I was going to have, but I've been looking forward to this. Blake, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I've been an avid reader of Going Concern ever since I started my new, or I should say, my second career in accounting, which was, I guess, back in 2010 at this point. And I think, how long's the site been around? It's been around for quite a while, right?
Yeah, the great Caleb Newquist started Going Concern, and I think it was in '09 or 2010. So
Uh,
you would have sort of started your career along with Going Concern.
well, that's great. Um, well, why don't we get straight to it, right? So
Yeah.
this podcast, Cloud Accounting Podcast, is all about what's new in the world of accounting technology and modern accounting firms. And so, as usual, my guest and I have selected a few of our top stories from the past few weeks, and we're going to share those with you today. And let's talk about them. So first, these are the four drivers of workaholism. This article about workaholism appeared in Fast Company in February, and this really stuck out to me. I am not a fan of workaholism. I see the tendencies in myself toward it, um, and so I highly recommend everyone check this out. The link will be in the show notes, of course, and you can see the URL at the bottom of your screen if you're watching live. Um, Basically, the gist of this article is that research shows that workaholism doesn't actually make people more productive than non-workaholics. And so this need to be working all the time is not healthy, right? And it doesn't actually have to do with engagement, right? People who are workaholics feel compelled to work simply because they feel like they should be working and not doing anything else. I saw this in my days in public accounting, and I'm interested, Jeff, in you know in your insights about this. I mean, I'm sure you get plenty of people who are, say, in Big Four and probably have those tendencies, right? And they're looking to make a change when they come to you in terms of finding a healthier work-life balance, that sort of thing.
That's a great point. It's ironic we're actually talking about this article in the middle of busy season. I imagine that some people probably listening to your podcast, Blake, are looking for a little escape from the busy time. But what was compelling to me about this article, what I found interesting was I thought I knew what workaholism was, and then I read the article. Workaholism doesn't mean you work long hours. It means you feel compelled to work because of internal pressures, and so you're constantly working. And you can work long hours and not be a workaholic. It's really about what's going on inside your head, and what you're. It's not about work ethic. It's about mistaken beliefs. And I think while the definition is it's internal pressures, look at the culture. I think that's probably in public accounting. There's a lot of external pressures that are going to make you believe that you ought to work, or you're going to get in trouble. And so that's a conversation we have every day. It's also a reason our people look for jobs. They don't apply to jobs during busy season, but they start looking for jobs at a higher clip during busy season than they do the rest of the year. So if you're, if you're an employer, you think about that. Your staff might be looking for jobs, looking for the way out during busy season. So how you're handling this as an employer is super important.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, knowing, and I always thought that my father was a workaholic, right? Or at least I called him one, because he would just constantly working at his home office or his office. But I realized he's actually not by this definition, because he was engaged in his job. He owned his own business. He loved it, right? He worked because he didn't have any hobbies. His work was his hobby, right? And that's different. This
Yes.
is like you're not happy, right? But you work because you feel like you can't mentally disengage from work. There are four categories of workaholism, right? In this article, there's the motivational. So those are the people that feel compelled to work because of the pressure to feel like they should be working all the time to achieve, right? There's the cognitive. That's people who can't turn off the work side of their brain. They just are always thinking about it. There's the emotional, right? People who experience negative emotions and anxiety and guilt when they aren't working. And then there's the behavioral, which is actually, this is probably the most like public accounting, which is people who work beyond what is expected of them by their organization because they want to be better than everyone else, right? Um, None of those were like my dad, but I definitely see those tendencies in myself. So I think it's really like it's important as employers that people that firms actively discourage workaholism, right? Because your employees will burn out. So
Right.
what are some ways, like, are there any ways that firms can help their employees achieve, better, like not become workaholics?
Because the definition was not what I thought. That's where my mind went as well. Is how do we change our beliefs about work? I bet you everyone talking on this podcast and listening to this podcast has some degree of workaholism. Or at least I know I do, and I identified the one that I have, which is one you go home and think about your work all the time. You worry,
Wow.
and so so my take is the solution has to start with yourself. It has to start with, what do you believe about work? And it's not as though you can you go on the other extreme end and say work exists to make you happy and to give you joy all the time. It's not that way. It's always a challenge, but you've got to be engaged with it. And I think you've got to sort of evaluate, why do you go to work and why do you work as hard as you do, and what are you believing about your boss and about your company, what's going to happen to you. And maybe, the one thing you can do as an employer is not create toxic work environments, is understand that there are humans that are working, and try to honor that through whatever HR policies you're going to have. But I know workaholics at super flexible companies, and I know engaged and happy people at, incredibly demanding, over the top type A companies. I think it's going to have to start with conversations with yourself. And one of the other things that I had that really came up was, there is a point where if you're working so much, you begin to have diminishing returns on your own productivity. So working 24 hours a day isn't productive, and so you have to sort of figure this out for yourself, I think. And I really believe it starts with the beliefs you have about your career, your job, and where you work.
Good points, definitely. Another thing that I've heard of, one thing I've heard of firms doing that is helpful is mandatory vacation requirements, right?
Okay.
So that, like, the opposite of of giving people the option of taking vacation is actually require them to do it, because a lot of people who are workaholics will just never take their vacation, right? So
Right.
not only good from an internal controls perspective, but also good from, like, actually showing that your team that it's important to take time off, right?
Well, so I'll follow up on that too. Is
Yeah.
it when the leaders inside a company take time off and they make a big deal about it, so a company we're going to talk about in another article, Gusto. One thing I learned from their leadership team is they go on vacations and then they send back, social media posts or pictures to the team, and the tone that sets is, hey, it's okay to take time off here. We're not going to judge you for taking those allotted days.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of mandatory, but I love that as a policy, and because we're all guilty of it, of probably not taking. Most people, we did a compensation survey this year, and almost no one takes all of their allotted vacation time. Okay, almost no one does. And so by making some of that mandatory, you are going to have some balance in your life and your team's life. That's really it.
Great points. So the next story that we're going to discuss is something that you've brought, Jeff. I'll let you introduce this topic.
Yeah, so this article is actually an article and a podcast. It's called "Meetings Are Toxic," and so I immediately clung on to this article and wanted to learn more. But this was in Signal versus Noise, which is the blog written by the company Basecamp, formerly known
I love
as
that
30
blog.
Second Signals. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, that's Blake's endorsement is all you need to go check out Signal v Noise.
Well, and a great company too, right?
This is Basecamp,
Yeah.
the company that Jason Fried founded, and as a knowledge worker, and then later I became an entrepreneur. I read everything him and his partners put out, and I encourage everybody to do it. So Basecamp also has a podcast called Rework, and if you know anybody from this company, they're very alternative in how they approach work, and it's so refreshing. It's like they never took venture capital. They were profitable from day one, and they're very, very proud of that. They don't have set office hours. It's completely remote. They don't have meetings, and that's what leads us to this article. Meetings are talking.
So let's talk about that, because I am not a fan of meetings, and I take it that you are not as well. So what's bad about meetings?
So what's bad about meetings, and they actually had some great horror stories on in the podcast of just 8-hour remote meetings over Skype across different time zones, that were just, you had to bring food and water to the meeting just to make it through the meeting.
I think I would quit my job right then and there if somebody made me attend an 8-hour meeting on
yeah,
video chat or something like that.
Well, and So most of the horror stories came from remote teams,
Right.
and there was this fear of CEOs, or what are my remote employees doing? I need to have meetings in order to rein them in and not feel so insecure about what they're doing. But what they boiled it down to was, one, recurring meetings are really a problem, because meetings should happen when people need to discuss and truly communicate and solve a problem and hash something out. But what are recurring meetings? Recurring meetings are usually updates of information that everybody in that room could just read, in a Slack channel
Yep.
or on a Google Doc. And so they talked about how these recurring meetings were just kind of ruining the lives of your teams. And we have a recurring meeting, and I read that going, I'm going to end this recurring meeting, my team meeting. Everything I can do can be disseminated over over some sort of Google Doc or whatever. But the other problem was, meetings should be applicable to everybody in the meeting. In other words, if you're having a meeting where you're primarily discussing marketing, does the
Mhm.
development team really need to be in that meeting? And
No.
aren't you just robbing them time from creative work? And so I don't care if you're in finance or accounting, or you're in creative work or engineering, you're at your best when you have long and uninterrupted swaths of time. And
Yes.
so if a meeting is nothing but an interruption, and it could be accomplished some other way, what they're saying is, shouldn't you consider that?
Well, and the thing about recurring meetings that really bugs me is that, and this happens here at Flowcast, is if we have a recurring marketing meeting every week on Wednesdays, and people, instead of talking about something on Monday, they'll put it on the agenda for Wednesday, and 2 days will go by when nothing happens because they feel like they have to have something to talk about in the meeting, right?
Right. What would you recommend them do instead? So if the meeting didn't happen,
Yeah.
then
Well,
what?
so we use a tool called Asana here for our marketing efforts, and Asana is task management, project management, and collaboration. So I'm working on the team to get us to use that tool more, right? So every project should be in Asana as a project, and if you need to talk to somebody about something, create a conversation in Asana, right? It takes it out of email. People can still get email notifications if they want about these messages. They don't have to, and it associates it in that project. So rather than waiting until a weekly status update meeting to bring up something, create a topic, to create a discussion thread right there, whenever, right when you need to. And then people can respond asynchronously when it's convenient for them. I'm a big fan of that. It's hard. It's very difficult to change people's habits, though.
Right. Even when you
So,
don't agree, even when you hate meetings, it's hard to
yeah,
end meetings.
yeah.
I mean, I'm so guilty of that. But I'm going to make a public commitment right now.
Uh-oh.
um,
I'm gonna have to have you back so we can find out if this worked or not.
I think you should, because we're going to make this move. So towards the end of the podcast, they interviewed a CEO who'd started a laundry company in Minneapolis, but he'd worked at McKinsey before that. And he said, he really was trying to get away from any kind of meeting at his company because of the asynchronous conversations that can happen where, like Trello or Asana or whatever. When I'm working on my piece, I can put my comments, my update, and be a good writer and put it in here. And then the next person adds their piece of work, and the next
Mm-hmm.
person adds their piece of work. So this man was talking about how what made him sick about meetings was when companies were having meetings to talk about meetings. Let's
Yep.
have a meeting to talk about when we're going to have a meeting. Well, this guy says, when he was at McKinsey, he was a big fan of problem solving sessions, and thoughtful, real communication where that you're solving challenges that require the full group's brain power. What a great idea for a meeting. And so when one of my colleagues at Accountingfly actually recommended this recently, he said, let's kill our team call. All it is an update, and let's work together on Friday mornings, or maybe even Friday all day, and tackle the biggest company-wide problem that we can. And we'll have development, we'll have marketing, we'll have customer service, and the leadership team and everybody, and just have a problem-solving work session.
I love that.
And if we have a problem to solve, we'll tackle it. If we don't, we won't meet. And so some of the rules that I took away from this were only meet when necessary, only have the people who should be in the meeting. They're the only people that are needed, and keep it as short as possible. And you don't have and have them when it works for everybody's schedule, not sort of the Friday at 9 status. So the commitment
Yeah.
I'm making publicly is we're going to end our team call that we have on Friday mornings, and we'll meet when we need to, and we're gonna start the problem solving session. So bring me on in 6 months. I'm gonna let you know if I was able to commit to that or not.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's so great. You're definitely coming back then.
Yeah, now I'm asking you just so you'll hold me accountable.
Excellent. Awesome. So, story number 3 on the list is I love this. So, this is about one of my favorite companies. This is Gusto, the payroll and HR company. Back in my days when I owned my own small accounting firm, I was one of the early Gusto users when they were like a team of 12 out of San Francisco. So this story appeared in February in Forbes. It's called "The Tech Unicorn That Went for Women Engineers. Here's How It Worked Out." And basically, it's a story about how Gusto did something that a lot of tech firms just can't seem to do, which is a female engineer was upset that she was the only female on a team of, how many was it? 17, I think, engineers.
Yeah.
She was the only woman, and she said, "Hey," she went to one of the founders and said, her name's Julia Lee. She said, "We got to do something about this. This isn't even representative of the number of female engineers in the industry." And rather than just sort of say, "Oh, we got a lot to do. We're a startup. We can't focus on this." Um, Gusto took this to heart and said, "We're going to do something about it." And the article details some steps that Gusto took to address this issue, and they went from 6% to 21% women engineers in less than a year, I believe. So some of the things they did, and this is applicable, I think, to accounting as well, right? We have a big problem with there not being enough women in partner positions in accounting firms, right? So how do you fix that? Um, so Gusto did things like rewrote their job descriptions to avoid masculine phrases like ninja rock star. That's
Ninja rock star.
right.
I love that.
And definitely, it didn't even occur to me that women wouldn't be attracted to that type of job. But yeah, it makes sense, right? Um, for a 6-month period in 2015, the company devoted 100% of its engineering recruitment efforts to women. They published a blog post about that made Gusto's diversity numbers public and broadcast its goal about hiring more women engineers. So, Jeff, like your public commitment to reduce the number of status update meetings, Gusto made a public commitment to increase its diversity. Um, they hired 2 in-house recruiters, and then they also they had an outside consultant look at their compensation policy to make sure that it wasn't discriminatory. And they also have really good paid leave for a primary parent and all that sort of thing. So took really meaningful steps, I think, um, to
What a
address that.
what a great article.
Yeah,
I love Gusto. I mean, just the my takeaways from this was, one, diversity in your team is a winning strategy, uh, and two, the other takeaway that you can apply to the accounting world is, Accountingfly is a recruiting company, and we talk to accounting companies, accounting firms, and companies in their finance departments every day, and recruiting the right people isn't as simple as posting a job. Gusto made a major commitment to recruiting the best talent, and they treated it like this campaign, and they sold out for it. I mean, it was all or nothing, and they didn't have immediate success either. I mean, the article basically says, at first it wasn't really working, but by the end of it, the national average is 18% female in computer science programs. Gusto has 21% female in their teams. It took a major commitment to changing the talent and really getting that talent in the door. But what a wonderful way to win the hearts of your team is by showing, by the CTO who did this, just
yeah,
to say, we're making this a serious priority for us because we're with you. This is important.
I think it's fantastic. And what's great is now that
Well,
they've got this base of women in their engineering team, it's going to be much easier for them in the future to recruit. Right.
well, absolutely. Let me get one other comment on Gusto. I mean, this
Yeah.
is a company that really lives its values, and I think a lot of people don't understand. And I'm with you. I don't understand sometimes how values translate into company performance. I'm sure they're on your website, but Gusto has real values and hires on those values and gives their team members an incentive to like participate and be rewarded by living out their values. They're real words and they have meaning, and do the right thing is one of them. And this is Edward Kim living out one of the values of Gusto. Well
That's
done.
great. All right, so here's our fourth and final news story for the podcast episode. Jeff, this is one of yours, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so this is from Going Concern, and of course, a selfish plug by me, but this is from March the 2nd, and it's called "How to Be a Part of the Team Even When Working Remotely." And I think it's important because in accounting, you are seeing the beginning days of remote accounting work. We're at the starting point. We're at the long tail of this, and it's definitely changing. But even among cloud accounting firms, Blake, I think it's something like 25% are actually remote, and that's a that's a Phillips number, not a fact. But that'd be my best guess. But the fact is that gig and remote are on the rise. If you're an accountant or you're an accounting leader, you're probably going to be making remote hires in the not too distant future, and it can get pretty darn isolating for team members. So Grant Hutchinson, who's one of the writers on Going Concern, talk to some different cloud accounting firm operators and sort of ask, well, what are you doing to building culture among remote talent? And it turns out it's a lot of making sure you're just building culture in general,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of companies aren't doing. But a couple of things that I thought were great takeaways were, you want to prevent isolation, and Slack is this interesting tool for us because I thought Slack would be this. You don't want Slack to replace your email. Slack needs to be like when you don't just below needing a meeting, you could probably work something out on Slack when you need synchronous communication. But Slack is really great for water cooler communication and throwing out a
Mm-hmm.
fun gift for the team when something good or something bad happened. There's a lot of bonding and sort of teamwork that can happen just by using the right Slack or some sort of chat. And he also talked about team bonding. Team bonding is an app that you can actually integrate and do some team bonding activities. There's an app called Team Bonding, so you may want to check that out.
Oh, interesting.
But
What is it? Is it just if I search team bonding on Google, I'll find that?
yeah, so
Team bonding.
one of the folks in the article recommended using this app called Team Bonding as a way of something that creates like games and fun activities for remote workers to plug in together over
Yeah.
email, over Slack, and over this app.
So something relevant to this whole discussion, you mentioned Slack. Um, some new apps have come out recently, like Slack, that I think will hopefully persuade more firms to adopt team chat tools. Last year, Microsoft released Microsoft Teams, which
Okay.
is their version of Slack, and it's included in I think almost all Office 365 subscriptions. So if your firm is on Office 365, you've now got Microsoft Teams included at no charge. So I highly recommend folks give that a try as a way to bridge the gap, say, with remote employees and bring that water cooler culture. And more recently, I don't know if you'd heard about this, Jeff, is Google released their own version. Google and Microsoft are very scared of Slack right now. It's called Hangouts Chat, and that actually happened. I think it was just recently. Might have been this week, and that again, it creates these channels, the persistent channels where people can chat, not just one-off conversations. So now, really, there's no excuse, right, to use a tool like that.
That's right. And I think what this is speaking to is how do we build culture in remote teams?
Mm.
And I think these chat tools are definitely one of them. Be careful. Don't let it turn into your email. You don't want it to just it kill you the way email kills you. So be diligent. But I was going to ask you, Blake. I mean, you've worked in you're Flowcast is a flexible place to
Mhm.
work, and you've been in cloud accounting firm situations. Like, what are your thoughts on building culture inside remote companies?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like my firm that I built and sold was a completely virtual bookkeeping company, and then we merged with a CPA firm that was completely virtual. So that was interesting, 4 years for me because I worked primarily from my home office,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to admit that I did start to feel a bit disconnected from team members, especially ones that I wasn't working with on a day-to-day basis. And so we would do annual get-togethers. That helped, but I would have loved it if we could have done quarterly. I think that's really important, is to get everyone together and be willing to spend the money. Um, and one thing that I think can mitigate that cost is if you take a hybrid approach to your firm, and you say we're going to allow remote work, but everybody has to be in a certain region. That's the model that Catching Clouds uses, right? Everybody is in the
Yeah.
greater Denver area, but they can all get together in a matter of a few hours if they need to, right?
Right.
Which
Right.
which I think is sort of the optimal setup. It works really well too because you exponentially increase your pool of applicants
Right.
jobs if you offer that remote setup in a greater metro area. Like in LA, I mean, LA is humongous, right? What's 12 million people. So if I had a firm
Yeah.
in LA, I could do a hybrid approach and you know reach a pretty substantial number of people.
Hybrid approach is interesting because
Yeah.
that's what we do, and we're kind of a mix. We have an office. You can come to the office. I don't expect you to come to the office. I have no expectations of a 9 to 5 in the office workday. I come to the office, but I come to the office because that's my preferred way to work. That's how I'm the most productive. Quarterly get-togethers is a definite a culture builder. I would say too, this is kind of a funny one, but if you use Zoom for your team calls, put it in the gallery view so that everybody kind of has an equal square or an equal box inside a conference call. And it's not like we learned this the hard way. We had like the team in Pensacola in a conference room, and we were dominating the talking, and like our remote employees felt like they were second class citizens.
Yeah.
So Zoom Gallery equalized everything. And we even do Zoom happy hours. I mean, it's kind of corny, but it's funny that starts to build a little bit of that team bonding, or sort of bridges the gap between the quarterly get-togethers for
Yep.
sure. There's some things you can do to build culture.
Well, and I'm a gamer. I don't know if you knew that, Jeff.
I did not.
And so my brother and I, he lives in New York City, and I live here in LA. So the only way that we really hang out outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas and summer break for him, because he's a teacher, is we play games online, right? So we get on our headsets, we get on Rocket League or something like that, and we play for 30 minutes at night. There's no reason why, if you have like a team that's into that, you can't do that too. And I know there's probably firm owners or people who work in firms listening right now. They're like, I would never play video games with my team. But it doesn't have to be like first-person shooters. It could be Words with Friends, right? It can be these casual games, and you could create a tournament or something like that in your firm, and that's a way to increase culture.
It's a great suggestion, and I think the bottom line is that yeah, it's harder. It's harder to create some culture, but it's also a necessary thing, and you might as well start trying different ways to build team, and because you don't want to lose your talent.
Well, great points there, and that's it for the news component of the podcast. And Jeff, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your projects, what you're working on, and what Accountingfly is. Um, I don't know if I mentioned this, I can't at the beginning, but one of my firms that I worked for used Accountingfly and still does, right?
Mhm.
HPC is a big Accountingfly recruiter, and I thought we got some great hires out of you guys. So everyone listening, please take a look at Accountingfly. And Jeff, What should they know, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to tell everybody about was we just published a video with Bruce Phillips from HPC, who's the CEO, and it was a video that we just put on our YouTube channel. So you just go to YouTube and search Accountingfly. It's the most recent video, but it's an interview with Bruce talking about what is a cloud accounting firm, what are the career opportunities inside cloud accounting firms, and how do you know if you're qualified or sort of capable of doing remote accounting work? What are the advantages? And Bruce is great. Bruce is a visionary, and I love talking to Bruce. And so we were able to have a conversation, capture it, and put it on YouTube. So please check that out. It's super valuable. But we've been around for 5 years. We merged with Going Concern 2 years ago. We're a digital staffing agency, and while we have placed CPAs at companies as large as Facebook and as small as one partner accounting firms, where we see our future is cloud accounting, building cloud accounting teams. And which, by the way, Blake, this conversation you and I have had in the past on what's a cloud accounting team. And I think 3 years from now, my clients will be coming to us to find them in-house managers, who are working in a highly flexible office, but committed to like a location and committed to an accounting firm. Our clients will be on that same team would be a remote CPA who's in another city, but just has a specialty and connected with the mission of the firm. And at that same team would be a gig economy worker who is in-house on a project because they have a certain expertise, and all working together to serve a client, part remote, part in person. To me, that's what a cloud accounting team looks like. And for us, I think a year from now, 90% of the jobs that we're serving and we're working are remote or cloud accounting firms, or cloud team jobs.
Well, and you told me an amazing stat recently when we were talking about this, that the cloud or hybrid job postings, meaning postings where people don't have to be in the office every day, get substantially more applicants than traditional in-house, in-office jobs, right? Like how much is it? It's an absurd multiple.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you two crazy statistics that are eye-opening for us. A remote or hybrid, we call a hybrid like catching clouds. You need to be in Denver, but you can work from home. That's a hybrid job. A remote or a hybrid accounting job will get 7 times the applicants that a traditional in an office CPA firm job would get. That's pretty important because we're in a time where, you ask most managing partners, they would say, I can't hire anybody. I can't find talent. We're in this great, I've heard it called a crisis. I don't think that's that far off. Well, there are options. You can hire freelancers. You can hire remotely, and you can start to change the way you operate your firm and start thinking about the cloud and build remote teams. We also we did a heat map on a recent email. So we have a list of 40,000 on our recruitment email list. We sent an email with a handful of jobs to the list recently, and so checked on what they clicked. Now there are 5 jobs listed, and like the first 4 jobs were office jobs. They had like 0.01 click through or something like that. The remote job, which is at a teeny tiny cloud accounting firm in Denver, 41% of the clicks were on that job.
Wow.
What is the talent interested in?
Yep.
I ask you. Is that crazy?
Well, and this lines up exactly with my own experience. And I'll tell you, my wife is a perfect example of this, right? So she's also a millennial. She works for actually a very large company. She works for Anthem Blue Cross in marketing. And you wouldn't believe it, but Anthem is actually very progressive with its remote work policies, and her team is distributed around the country. She has an office she's assigned to, but she doesn't actually have to go there. Now,
Wow.
I know for a fact that Samantha could make 20% more easily if she went out and looked for a different job in LA, given the market here. She has no interest in doing so because she loves the flexibility that she's offered, right? She has an office she can go to, doesn't have to do it, can work from home. Really helps being a mom, right? not having those set 9 to 5 hours. She works with a team that's on the East Coast. Half of her team is on the East Coast, so like they don't have 9 to 5 set up. It's really just get your work done and be available during the day for meetings. And she is so happy. So she's not on the accounting side, but it's exactly the mentality of she would never even consider going back to a traditional job.
Go back to the meetings are toxic article, and one of the fears of going remote is that wouldn't work here, and why wouldn't it work here being public accounting, let's say, or an accounting teams, and really it boils down to sort of the same reason why they were having these crazy meetings. The leader's fear of what the person who's offered flexibility is doing. And there are ways to manage that.
Yeah.
Your wife is probably a better employee and a more loyal employee. You just proved it, because this very large corporation she works for has given her flexibility and responsibility.
Yeah. They trust her. They don't make her track her time. And this is a creative agency inside of an insurance company, right? These are people that you would typically think could not work remotely, right? Least of all, because they do creative work, and yet they can do it. So if they can do it, accountants can do it, right? I challenge anyone listening to tell me why accountants can't work remotely when a creative agency can do it. Right?
Well, first of all, that's hilarious, and secondly, you and I both know that accountants can do it, because you and I know a lot of accounting firms and companies that hire accountants that are absolutely crushing it in doing that, and they're running circles around the competition.
And I think that the folks who are not convinced, the reason is that they haven't seen what technology can do to enable remote work. I think that's the key, right? If you don't have project management software in place, if you don't have collaboration software in place, it's impossible to do it via email. I mean, it's impossible to be productive in an office if you're just using email, right? So I think that's what people really need to look at, is getting those systems in place. Shameless self-promotion, close management software helps you do that for an internal accounting department, right? It's the same concept as something as simple as Basecamp, which we were talking about earlier, just specialized, right? And so you combine those two things, right? You combine the flexibility and the technology, and you get really, really happy employees that aren't going to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just gave the perfect example of somebody who verified that theory.
Awesome. Well, I don't think we have any Q&A today. I think we have. We must just be so good, Jeff, that we have answered everyone's questions already. We've anticipated them. So thank you to everyone who joined in live. Really appreciate you listening. Again, I'm Blake Oliver at Flowcast. My guest today was Jeff Phillips of Accountingfly. If you're interested in getting more updates about cloud accounting, please consider subscribing to Cloud Accounting Weekly at cloudaccountingweekly.com or visit flowcast.com. And don't forget, you can check out Jeff's company, Accountingfly, at accountingfly.com. Jeff, thanks for coming again. And everyone, thanks for listening. Matt, back to you.